Hello, my darling, and welcome back. We are reading part 2 of John Milton's Paradise Lost, Book 1. So thick bestrown, abject and lost lay these, covering the flood, under amazement of their hideous change. He called so loud that all the hollow deep of hell resounded. Princes, potentates, warriors, the flower of heaven, once yours, now lost. If such astonishment as this can seize eternal spirits, or have ye chosen this place, after the toil of battle, to repose your wearied virtue, for the ease you find to slumber here, as in the vales of heaven? Or in this abject posture have ye sworn to adore the conqueror, who now beholds cherub and seraph, rolling in the flood with scattered arms and ensigns, till anon his swift pursuers from heaven gates discern the advantage, and descending, tread us down thus drooping, or with linked thunderbolts transfix us to the bottom of this gulf. Awake, arise, or be forever fallen. They heard and were abashed, and up they sprung upon the wing, as when men won't want to watch, on duty, sleeping found by whom they dread, rouse and bestir themselves ere well awake. Nor did they not perceive the evil plight in which they were, or the fierce pains not feel. Yet to their general's voice they soon obeyed, innumerable, as when the potent rod of Amran's son in Egypt's evil day waved up the coast, upcalled a pitchy cloud of locusts, warping on the eastern wind, that over the realm of impious Pharaoh hung like night, and darkened all the land of Nile. So numberless were those bad angels seen, hovering on wing under the cope of hell, twixt upper, nether, and surrounding fires, till, as a signal given, the uplifted spear of their great sultan waving to direct their course, in evil balance down they light on the firm brimstone, and fill all the plain. A multitude, like which the populous north poured never from her frozen loins to pass rain o'er the Dana, when her barbarous sons came like a deluge on the south, and spread beneath Gibraltar to the Libyan sands. Forthwith form every squadron and each band, the heads and leaders thither haste where stood their great commander, godlike, shapes and forms, excelling human, princely dignities and powers, that erst in heaven sat on the thrones, though on their names in heavenly records now there be no memorial, blotted out and razed by their rebellion from the books of life. Nor had they yet among the sons of Eve, wandering over the earth through God's high sufferance for the trial of man, by falsities and lies, the greatest part of mankind they corrupted to forsake God, their Creator, and the invisible glory of Him that made them, to transform oft to the image of a brute, adorned with gay religions, full of pomp and gold and devils to adore for deities. Then were they known to men by various names and various idols through the heathen world. Say, Muse, their names then known, who first, who last, roused from the slumber of that fiery couch at the great emperor's call, as next in worth came singly, where he stood on the bare strand, while the promiscuous crowd stood yet aloof. The chief were those who, from the pits of hell, roaming to seek their prey on earth, durst fix their seats long after, next to the seat of God, their altars by his altar, gods adored among the nations round, and durst abide Jehovah, thundering out of Sion, throned between the cherubim, yea, often placed within his sanctuary itself, their shrines, abominations, and with cursed things, his holy rites and solemn feasts profaned, and with their darkness durst affront his light. First Moloch, horrid king, besmeared with blood of human sacrifice, and parents' tears, though, for the noise of drums and timbrels loud, their children's cries unheard, that pass through fire to his grim idol. Him the Ammonite worshipped in Rabbah and her watery plain, in Argob, in Bashan, to the stream of utmost Arnon. Nor content with such audacious neighborhood, the wisest heart of Solomon he lay by fraud to build his temple right against the temple of God, on an opprobrious hill, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnom, Tophet thence, and black Gehenna called, the type of hell. Next Chemos, the obscene dread of Moab's sons, from Auror to Nebo, and the wild of southmost Arborim, in Hesebon, in Haronaim, Sion's rill, beyond the flowery dale of Simba, clad with vines, and Dalil, to the Asulphic pool, Peor his other name when he enticed Israel in Sittim on their march from the Nile. For wanton rites, this cost them woe, yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged, even to that hill of scandal, by the grove of Moloch, homicide, lust, hard by hate, till good Josiah drove them thence to hell. With these came thee who, from the bordering flood of old Euphrates, to the brook that parts Egypt from Syrian ground, with general names of Baalim, Ashtaroth, those male, those feminine, for spirits, when they please, can either sex assume, or both. So soft and uncompounded is their essence pure, not tried or manacled with joint or limb, nor founded on the brittle strength of bones like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they choose, dilated, condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purposes, and works of love or enmity fulfill. For those the race of Israel oft forsook their living strength, and unfrequented left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down for bestial gods, for which their heads, as low, bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear of despicable foes. With these in troop came Ashtoreth, whom the Phoenicians called Astarte, Queen of Heaven, with crescent horns, to those bright imaged nightly by the moon. Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs in Sion, also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain, built by that usurious king whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolatresses, fell to idols foul. Thammuz came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsels to lament his fate in amorous ditties all summer's day, while smooth Adonis from his native rock ran purple to the sea, supposed with blood of Thammuz yearly wounded. The love tale infected Zion's daughters with like heat. Their wanton passions in the sacred porch Ezekiel saw, when by the vision led, his eyes surveyed the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next came one who mourned in earnest when the captive ark maimed his brute image, head and hands lopped off in his own temple on the Grunsel edge, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. Dagon his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fish, yet had his temple high reared in Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine, in Goth, Ascalon, and Acheron, and Gaza's frontier bounds. He followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus on the fertile banks of Abana and Pharphar, lucid streams. He also against the house of God was bold. A leper once he lost and gained a king, Ahaz, his sotish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mode, whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After these appeared a crew who, under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train, with monstrous shapes and sorceries abused fanatic Egypt and her priests to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. Nor did Israel escape the infection when their borrowed gold composed the calf in Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the grazed ox, Jehovah, who in one night, when he passed from Egypt marching, equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and all her bleeding gods. Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love, vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked, yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars, when the priest turns atheist, as did Eli's sons, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with insolence and wine. Witness the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when the hospitable door exposed a matron to avoid worse rape. These were the prime in order and in might, the rest were long to tell, though far renowned, the Ionian gods of Javan's issue held gods, yet confessed later than heaven and earth their boasted parents, Titan, heaven's firstborn, with his enormous brood and birthright seized by younger Saturn. He from mightier Jove, his own and Rhea's son, like measure found. So Jove usurping reigned. These, first in Crete and Ida known, thence on the snowy top of cold Olympus, ruled the middle air, the highest heaven, or on the Delphian cliff, or in Dodona, and through all the bounds of Doric land, or whom with Saturn old, fled over Adria to the Hesperian fields, and over the Celtic roamed the utmost isles. All these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp, yet such wherein appeared obscure some glimpse of joy to have found their chief, not in despair, to have found themselves not lost in loss itself, which on his countenance cast like doubtful hue. But he, his wonted pride soon recollecting with high words that bore semblance of worth, not substance, gently raised their fainting courage and dispelled their fears. Then straight commands that, at the warlike sound of trumpets loud and clarions, be upreared his mighty standard, that proud honor claimed Azazel as his right, a cherub tall, who forthwith from the glittering staff unfurled the imperial ensign, which full height advanced, shone like a meteor streaming to the wind, with gems and gold luster, rich emblazoned, seraphic arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds, at which the universal host sent up a shout that tore hell's concave, and beyond frightened the reign of chaos and old night. All in a moment through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orient colors waving. With them rose a forest huge of spears, and thronging helms appeared, and serried shields in thick array of depth immeasurable. Anon they move in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood of flutes and soft recorders, such as raise to height of noblest temper heroes old, arming to battle, and instead of rage deliberate valor breathed, firm and unmoved with dread of death to fight or foul retreat, nor wanting power to mitigate and swage with solemn touches troubled thoughts and chase anguish and doubt and fear and sorrow and pain from mortal or immortal minds. Thus they, breathing united force with fixed thought, moved on in silence to soft pipes that charmed their painful steps over the burnt soil. And now, advanced in view they stand, a horrid front of dreadful length and dazzling arms, in guise of warriors old, with ordered spear and shield, awaiting what command their mighty chief had to impose. He through the armed files darts his experienced eye, and soon traverse the whole battalion views, their order due, their visages and stature as of gods, their number last he sums, and now his heart distends with pride and, hardening in his strength, glories, for never, since created man, met such embodied force as, named with these, could merit more than that small infantry warred on by cranes, though all the giant brood of Phlegra with the heroic race were joined that fought at Thebes and Ilium, on each side, mixed with auxiliary gods and what resounds in fable or romance as Uther's son, begirt with British and Armoric knights, and all who since baptized or infidel, jousted in Aspremount or Montalban, Damasco, Morocco, Trebizond, or whom Biserta sent from Afric's shore when Charlemagne with all his peerage fell by Fontarabia. Thus far, these beyond compare of mortal prowess, yet observed their dread commander. He above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower. His form had yet not lost all its original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the new sun rises, looks through the horizontal misty air shorn of his beams, or from behind the moon in dim eclipse. Disastrous twilight sheds on half the nations, and with fear of change perplexes monarchs. Darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel, but his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek. But under brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride, waiting revenge, cruel his eye, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold the fellows of his crime, the followers rather, far other once held in bliss, condemned, forever now to have their lot in pain, millions of spirits for his fault immersed of heaven, and from eternal splendors flung for his revolt, yet faithful how they stood, their glory withered, as when heaven's fire hath scathed the forest oaks or mountain pine. With singed top, their stately growth, though bare, stands on the blasted heath. He now prepared to speak, whereat their doubled ranks they bend from wing to wing, and half enclose him round with all his peers. Attention held them mute. Thrice he essayed, and thrice, in spite of scorn, tears, such as angels weep, burst forth. At last, words interwove with sighs found out their way, and this ends part 2 of the first book. I hope that you are able to relax and get some sleep tonight. A very sweet